I never imagined that a simple babysitting gig could turn into a nightmarish ordeal. My name is Rachel, and I had been babysitting for the Johnson family for years. They were a lovely couple with two adorable children, Emily and Jake. But what happened that fateful night would haunt me forever. It was a chilly evening when I arrived at the Johnsons' house. Mrs. Johnson greeted me warmly and gave me a rundown of the kids' bedtime routine before she and Mr. Johnson headed out for their dinner date. Everything seemed normal as I settled in with Emily and Jake, reading them bedtime stories and tucking them into bed. As the night wore on, I decided to watch TV in the living room while the kids slept upstairs. But as I flipped through the channels, a sense of unease settled over me. The house felt different somehow, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Just as I was about to brush off my unease as paranoia, I heard a faint scratching sound coming from upstairs. My heart skipped a beat as I tiptoed up the stairs, trying not to wake the kids. The scratching grew louder as I approached Emily and Jake's room, sending shivers down my spine. I pushed open the door and flicked on the light, expecting to find a raccoon or some other nocturnal creature. But the room was empty, save for Emily and Jake sleeping soundly in their beds. Confused, I chalked it up to the old house settling and returned downstairs, but the scratching persisted, following me from room to room like a sinister shadow. Each time I investigated, I found nothing out of the ordinary. It was as if the house itself was playing tricks on me, toying with my sanity. As the night wore on, the scratching grew louder and more insistent, until it was all I could hear. I tried to call the Johnsons to ask if they had any pets, or if there was a logical explanation for the noise, but the line was dead. Terrified and alone, I huddled in the living room, counting down the minutes until the Johnsons returned. But just when I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, the scratching stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to suffocate me. When the Johnsons finally returned, I burst into tears, babbling about the scratching and the dead phone line. They exchanged worried glances before Mr. Johnson went to investigate. Moments later, he returned with a grim expression on his face. He explained that the scratching sound had been caused by a raccoon trapped in the attic, which he had managed to scare off. But as for the phone line, he had no explanation. It had been working perfectly fine when they left. As I left the Johnsons' house that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And though I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, I knew deep down that the babysitter's nightmare was far from over. As a babysitter, I've always enjoyed spending time with kids. So when the Thompsons asked me to watch over their baby girl, Lily, for the evening, I eagerly agreed. Little did I know that night would turn into a chilling nightmare. The Thompsons lived in a quaint suburban neighborhood, and their house was cozy and inviting. After putting Lily to bed in her nursery, I settled down in the living room, expecting a quiet night of reading. But as the night wore on, a sense of unease settled over me. It started with faint whispers drifting through the air, barely audible yet undeniably present. I brushed it off as my imagination playing tricks on me, but the feeling persisted, gnawing at the edges of my consciousness. Then I heard it, a soft scratching at the window. My heart pounded in my chest as I crept towards the source of the sound. Peering through the curtains, I saw a shadowy figure lurking outside, its face obscured by darkness. Panic surged through me as I realized someone was trying to break in. I rushed to lock the doors and windows, praying that whoever was outside would give up and go away, but the scratching continued, growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. Terrified, I grabbed Lily and retreated to her nursery, hoping to find safety behind its sturdy door. But as I cradled her in my arms, I heard the unmistakable sound of glass shattering downstairs. With trembling hands, I dialed 911, pleading for help as I barricaded the nursery door with whatever furniture I could find. But help seemed impossibly far away, and the whispers grew louder, filling the room with their chilling presence. Suddenly, the door burst open, and the intruder stood before me, a sinister smile twisting his lips. In his hand gleamed a gleaming knife, its blade glinting in the moonlight. Instinct kicked in, and I lunged towards him, knocking the knife from his grasp. We grappled on the floor, locked in a desperate struggle for survival. But just as he gained the upper hand, the door burst open once more, and Mr. and Mrs. Thompson stormed in, armed with a shotgun. Without hesitation, they fired, the deafening blast echoing through the nursery. The intruder fell to the ground, a look of shock frozen on his face as a pool of blood spread around him. As the police arrived to take the intruder away, I held Lily close, grateful to be alive. But the whispers still lingered in the air, a chilling reminder of the horrors that had unfolded that night and